What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Stacking the Box College Football Edition. I'm your host, Reed Wallach, joined by the great Cody Williams. You can follow him on Twitter at TheSizzle20. You can follow me on Twitter at Reed Wallach. We're going to get you set for the entire Week 7 slate. We got a bunch of picks we want to give out, and we got to recap. Cody, pretty crazy week. That was Week 6. We had Red River get wild. We had USC keep me up until 3 a.m. on the East Coast watching live. We had Alabama stay in the mix for the College Football Playoff. Maybe they're back, one of their toughest tests. They've passed that now. A lot to get to. Cody, what's going on, man?
I'm doing good, man. Licking my wounds a little bit. I had a rough week. Lost a lot of bets last week, but, we'll bounce back. And at least it was good football. The worst thing is losing bets when you're watching bad football.
To be determined. I don't know about that. Sometimes, at least you can laugh it off or something. But yeah, it was. I wouldn't even say it was the highest quality of football last week because of some of the decision making that was going on across the entire country. But right. It was most certainly very impactful one on the college football playoff picture, and I'm pumped to get into that with you. And hey, listen, we get back on the horse. We said it last week. What goes around comes around. We're going to turn this around. We're about halfway through the season. We got some work to do, but that's why we wake up in the morning. We get to work and we go through these games is so we could get better and we could, turn our records around. But if you want free bets and you want free credits, you want free opportunity to make some money over on DraftKings Sportsbook, then you got to check out this promotion that they're running in partnership with Stacking the Box. New users, if you sign up for DraftKings with the promo code STB, stands for Stacking the Box, you get $200 instantly in bonus bets, and you also get a no-sweat single-game parlay every single day. And just absolutely ludicrous promotion from DraftKings. Big shout out to them. Again, use the promo code at sign-up, STB, and again, that is $5. If you bet $5 on your first bet, you instantly get $200 in bonus bets, and you will also get separate no-sweat single-game parlays every single day when you opt in. So again, just use that code STB, and you'd be helping out this great podcast. So why wouldn't you? Hopefully, we can make you some money this week, and you could use some of our analysis to go make some insightful wagers. This offer is only available to new customers who are 21 plus and physically present in legal gambling states. Please remember to always gamble responsibly and check the episode description for the full terms to this offer and to see if you qualify. Again, that's code STB. If you're watching on the YouTube stream, you'll see the code in the bottom right. Again, that's promo code STB. Cody, just going to lay it out for you. Biggest takeaway from Week 6 was?
Oklahoma's for real, man. I was all over Texas in that game because I seriously doubted Oklahoma. And they hadn't played a high level of competition. They'd, messed around in a couple spots, only beating Cincinnati on the road by 14, only scoring 20 points in that game. And they proved me wrong. I think I never doubted fully Dillon Gabriel. I may have doubted his ceiling a little bit, and he showed up in the biggest way possible. That was the best game I've ever seen Dillon Gabriel play. But I think what really I took away from the Sooners in that game was their defensive front was getting after it. Their defensive front controlled a lot of that game, really limited what Texas was able to do in the run game. And I didn't think that Oklahoma had that. I know Brent Venables is a fantastic defensive coach. He proved that at Clemson. But based on what we saw last year, based on the up and down results early in this season, I wasn't sure that they could do it on the biggest stage against top tier competition. And they surely did it.
Yeah, I think Oklahoma, full credit to them for winning the game, but I still think Texas is better.
Absolutely.
I underrated Oklahoma and the level they could get to, but I will say though that the team got ahead early. The team had a goal line stand at the 1 yard line, 4 straight stops by Texas. I think Texas kind of shot themselves in the foot a lot more than Oklahoma, and not to say Texas lost this game more than Oklahoma won it. It's more that, to me, if Oklahoma is going to now make the college football playoff and they're going to run the table because we could go through their schedule and it's so easy. And we had discussed this before the game that this was so important to both teams' college football playoff hopes because the Big 12 looks so easy.
Mm-hmm.
If Oklahoma was to make the college football playoff, I think they'd get smoked by Georgia or Michigan, assuming they
absolutely.
they probably play. Those are the top 2 seeds. Whereas Texas, I think, has a better chance of competing with those teams. So I still think Texas ceiling's higher. I think Texas played a pretty poor game relative to their standards or what you should expect from them in a game like that. But that being said, Oklahoma did what they had to do. And I thought that the offense, especially Dylan Gabriel, made a ton of plays that I wasn't sure he was going to be able to do, mainly with his legs. Rush for over 100 yards in that game.
Career high, I believe.
Oklahoma's ground game, if I'm not mistaken, let me pull up the box score real quick. Yeah, I mean, two starting running backs, Walker and Major combined, 24 carries for 73 yards. Like that is a incredibly low mark, but Dylan Gabriel, 13 carries, 114 yards and a touchdown. So Dylan Gabriel made a lot of plays happen with his legs, which was needed. I mean, big game, quarterback sometimes needs to take off. And so shout out to Dylan Gabriel, definitely deserves that one. And we'll see Oklahoma now inside track to running the table, definitely getting to the Big 12 championship. Texas can't slip up now. We assume a one-loss Texas, if they were to get Oklahoma back, would probably make the college football playoff, but margin for error is now essentially zero. A team that overcame a road test, Texas wasn't on the road, but away from home, and kept their college football playoff hopes alive. Alabama. We had spoken about this game last week. I like Texas A&M in the game because I questioned if Jalen Milroe was going to be able to really succeed in the obvious passing situations, and he did. I mean, best game of Jalen Milroe's career probably. Absolutely teed off on the Texas A&M secondary. I mean, my initial thought was correct because Alabama couldn't run the ball. I think they finished with like sub 30 total rushing yards when you account for sacks, but there are just too many deep shots and just mind-boggling decision-making again from Jimbo Fisher. I mean, I was watching the game and before halftime, A&M stops Alabama at like around midfield, 40-yard line either side, about a minute and a half left. Texas A&M had 2 timeouts. Nope, didn't feel like trying to get the ball back and trying to score, get another 3 points. Punts in plus territory, kicks a field goal plus territory. I mean, I kind of see what you're doing at the end of the game where they kick a field goal at the 2-yard line because it's 4th down. If you don't get it, the game is literally over. But if you kick a field goal, it extends the game. But like you're at the 2-yard line, you don't think like you should probably try and like when you're like if you're at like the 17 or something and you're like getting to that point where it's like, all right, we need to like score. We need to score soon and get the stop so we have enough time for the next possession, hopefully. I see that, but like you're at the 2-yard line, like you don't want to try and score and put some pressure on them and like because the odds are you're probably not getting back down there, which you're gonna need to get back down there to win the game. So but Texas A&M, it was a team I was high on going into the year, and I mean that's the difference between Alabama and Texas A&M right there. Coaching decisions, poor management, clock management, game management. So Cody, what were some of your takeaways? That I kind of gave I kind of bagged on Texas A&M there, but what do you think about Alabama? Are you starting to believe in them that they can maybe make a run to the college football playoff?
It's hard for me to still get there. It really is. Like you said, that's the best game we've seen Jalen Milroe play, and like all the credit in the world to him because I think coming into the game, you and I both expected Texas A&M's defensive front to maybe cause some problems for him, given what we saw Texas do in that earlier game this season. And he handled it well. He, Jermaine Burton had a career day, was wide open.
Monster game.
Secondary. Oh, yeah. And I just think that Texas A&M, I think one of my big takeaways was there's a bigger discrepancy between Connor Wegman and Max Johnson than we may have realized. I think if Connor Wegman plays in that game, Texas A&M is a lot more live to actually take down Alabama, just because I think Max Johnson's decision-making and holding onto the ball a little long, the offense was kind of catered to him to like put him in deep drops so receivers could get open, whereas Wegman has a little more mobility to make like kind of allow that to happen in structure or out of structure. And I think that Alabama has the potential to get caught by a team like LSU. And I understand that LSU, I'm not high on LSU, but the one thing I know about LSU and Jaden Daniels is that team can score on anyone.
Yeah.
That offense is foolproof. And if you get this Alabama team in a shootout situation, I'm not sure I still trust Jalen Milroe to keep up and keep the pace in that type of situation. So I'm still circling that LSU game as one to watch. And with the ups and downs that we've seen from Milroe, with the inconsistent line play, with the run game not really being reliable for Alabama, who's to say that a team like Auburn in in Auburn in the Iron Bowl where things always get crazy. Who's to say that they can't, knock off Alabama in that game? Who's to say that, I don't know, Kentucky might give them trouble? Like there's slip up potential stuff for this team when there's no room for error for them to make the playoff.
Yeah, that's a good point. What you said about like there's no room, or there's less room for error with these teams, where in prior years, more recent years, even where you have like Bryce Young or even Mac Jones and those teams,
yeah,
a turnover goes against them. Like Bama knows they're going to get it back on like the next drive. They'll just get the points back or something. Obviously you don't want a pick six or like a short field for the opponent, but it feels like Alabama, they play Ole Miss. Defensive effort. They really need to grind that one through. They win 24-10. A&M, they win 26-20. Really need a lot of sacks. They need the safety. They need a lot of stops in like the green zone inside the 40. Texas gets the 34, kind of puts them out of reach. I don't really count Mississippi State. I don't think Arkansas is going to be, this version of Arkansas won't give them a lot of trouble.
No.
Tennessee, I don't really trust Tennessee's offense right now to go to Bryant-Denny Stadium and give them trouble, but like that game was in Knoxville. Maybe this is a different conversation where that offense could maybe hum a little bit more. You mentioned LSU. I completely agree with you. They can maybe get to an offensive ceiling that Alabama just can't get to this year.
Exactly.
This team has a very defined set of circumstances that could win football games in, and I think that showed last week as well. That being said, if we're like projecting out the rest of the season, let's say Alabama gets to the SEC championship game and is playing an undefeated Georgia team. This Georgia offense, we said this before the season, that this offense might actually have a higher ceiling despite the new play caller, despite losing Stetson Bennett. Carson Beck has a big arm, and some of these receivers are starting to really get going here. It's Rosemary Jackson, it's Brock Bowers. All these guys starting to get going. This offense is looking a lot more vertical, and they just absolutely pumped Kentucky.
Hasted them.
Yeah. I'm starting to think, though, because like Alabama can't get there without winning the SEC championship. You start to figure in that matchup. I wonder if the matchup is even there for Alabama to beat Georgia. So just something to keep in mind. Before we get to picks for this week, one more game I wanted to mention because it was easily the most chaotic, and I'm still catching up on sleep because of it. USC Arizona. Boy, did I want Arizona to win that game.
Oh, I know you did.
I have like a really weird relationship with this USC team because I love Caleb Williams. I think he's unbelievable and is like at box office. Gotta watch him. But this USC team pisses me off to no end because I still don't think they're that good. I think it's a one-man show. And the defense is still terrible. And like I'm watching this game, and I'm forget that I had Arizona plus 21. That bet was done.
Oh yeah,
early. That game was done.
You cashed that in the first quarter, basically.
I wanted Arizona to win though because USC didn't deserve that game. At no point did USC was it like, oh, Arizona's playing like so out of their mind that like, yeah, tip your cap. No, Arizona was like the far better team in that game. It was very few swing. First of all, they built a 17-0 lead, but a few swing plays throughout the game really turned this game in USC's favor, mainly because they have the Heisman Trophy winner. But, just an absolutely chaotic game, triple overtime. Caleb Williams needs an insane 2-point conversion to win the game. And Arizona, again, bad coaching. Jed Fish, the Arizona head coach, didn't know the overtime rules. That was apparent, and basically ran out of plays because their answer to a staggered line where Caleb Williams basically takes a cornerback one-on-one like it's a basketball game and says, I'm getting into the end zone whether you like it or not.
I'm better than you. Watch this.
I'm about to just tiptoe the sideline here. Arizona comes back on the other side of the field and runs just like a sweep. Like just like a pulling guard sweep, loses 6 yards. The game obviously ends there. So great game. But Cody, any thoughts on that game? Any thoughts on USC in general? Open season here before we get onto the week 7 picks.
So I may be, 2 hours behind you in the mountain time zone, but I'm still catching up on sleep from that one too, man. That kept everyone up. It didn't matter what coast you were on, But no, the USC defense or the USC as a whole, it's frustrating to me. I'm kind of in the same boat as you. Like, I want this team to be better, but without Caleb Williams, they're probably a 7-5, 6-6 team. Let's be honest about it. But I think the one thing that makes me hesitant to completely write them off. I still don't believe in them as a playoff contender necessarily, but write them off in terms of like being like a 1-loss, 2-loss team, even with this defense, is despite Caleb Williams being like superhuman, I've watched, I mean, they've been on in a lot of like singular spots, so I've been able to get a lot of eyes on USC this season. The offense looks the same every single time, and that's not something we're necessarily used to seeing from Lincoln Riley. And with the way their schedule is set up, with it so backloaded with all their like top tier opponents starting this week with Notre Dame, I wonder if there's like keeping some bullets in the chamber, keeping some wrinkles to their offense that could be coming for this higher tier competition, trying not to, put too much on film. And so I wonder if this offense has the opportunity to level up. That's still not going to entirely negate how bad this defense is playing. Like, this defense has flashed like maybe like half a quarter or a quarter of good play, but 4 quarters together, not even close. But I do wonder if this offense still has the opportunity to level up.
I agree with you, but like, I would be absolutely shocked if USC made the college. Like, I would probably eat a shit if USC made, like, just the defense too bad. I mean, if they lose this week, that's obviously over. But I mean, they're 110th in tackling grade. They're outside the top 100 EPA per rush. And the offense is obviously top 5, top 10, but like that doesn't work week after week. It just, you got to be somewhat balanced. And I mean, you're talking about backload schedule at Notre Dame. They get Utah, which seems like that's going to be a little bit easier than you would think before the season, at Cal. Then you host Washington, at Oregon back-to-back. They're going to lose at least one of those. They just are. That's just how the sport works. Yeah. And then you get UCLA. And then you got the UCLA game to close out the season. UCLA's defense might have the best. It might be the best defense in the Pac-12 this year. They're absolutely filthy. So they're going to get tripped up at least once, probably twice. And if they make the Pac-12 championship game, that's a whole nother game they have to get through. So to me, this USC team is fun to watch. They're exciting. They have the best player in the sport on their team. But that's all they are. They are not like a serious contender. They are not like, to quote the late, great Logan Roy, they're not serious people.
Right. No, I mean, I'm with you. I don't think they're a playoff contender, but I think they're like, with how poorly this defense has played, with them, like, as you mentioned, like, probably should have lost that Arizona game. There's a case to be made, like, that they might not be a New Year's Six team. And that's why I bring up the point about the offense potentially leveling up, because I still think there's potential for that, even if I don't think they're a playoff contender.
100%. You ready to do some picks for this week? Get back on track?
I'm definitely ready to get back on track. It's only place to go is up.
All right, let's do it. We will start our Week 7 picks. But first, let me tell you again about this awesome DraftKings promotion. If you sign up for DraftKings today, use the promo code STB, which stands for Stack in the Box. You will get $200 in bonus bets instantly on your first $5 wager. So again, bet $5, get $200 in bonus bets. And then you will also get each day, no sweat, single game parlays. So again, you will get your single game parlays matched upon deposit, sign up, and $200 in bonus bets. So a really crazy promo there from our partners DraftKings. And if you use the code STB, you are supporting the podcast. So please do that. All right, let's do some picks here. We did a lot last week. We're doing less picks this week. We'll see if that's to our benefit or not. Last week was solid for me, 5-3, bounce back. Yeah. Cody, we got some work to do, 1-7, but hey, only one way to go. Only one way to go. So let's see. Let's start early week. We got a handful of Thursday and Friday games to choose from. We have Thursday night. We have SMU traveling to East Carolina in AAC play. West Virginia plays at Houston, 2 Big 12 teams off of a bye. And then Friday night, Tulane goes to Memphis. That game should be, I think, sneaky banger there. Stanford plays at Colorado, and Fresno State plays at Utah State. So 5 games to choose from. Cody, where are you looking?
I'm going to that last game on the slate, and it's a weird pick, but I promise I have some reasoning behind it. I'm going Utah State second half plus 3.5. So taking the dog in the second half against the spread at home. So shout out to Chip Patterson of the Cover 3 podcast on CBS Sports for pointing this out. Utah State has been an absolute wagon in the second half. They're actually 6-0 straight up in the second half this season, despite being 3-3 on the year overall. And that includes like the three losses. Like in Iowa in the opener, they won the second half 11-7. Against Air Force, which they lost pretty handily, they won the second half 14-7. James Madison, who they lost to, they actually won the second half 21-7. And on top of that, you can see that in the offense. Quarterback Cooper Lagasse in the first half has a 61.3% completion rate with 3 touchdowns and 4 picks. In the second half, 78.4% completion rate with 7 TDs and no interceptions. Head coach Blake Anderson has been making halftime adjustments better than anyone in the country this season. And I think Fresno State's probably the better team, but they also have a quarterback injury that's a little uncertain right now with Mikey Keene, the UCF transfer. And I think that Utah State is with the way they've adjusted in the second half, I think they're live to do it again, and getting 3.5 points. I'm willing to take that.
Yeah, it's an interesting look, and I respect the homework being done there. That's like a sound handicap there. It also makes sense. Team's a dog. Team's expected to lose. Utah State's been getting kind of smacked around in the first half, and when teams are letting up their guard, Utah State keeps pushing. So it's not like you're taking a team. Utah State, they're winning outright in these games, but they're typically underdogs in almost every single one of them. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. UConn, they were dogs last week against Colorado State. So it's a team that in catch-up mode, they're pretty effective. And like you said, Blake Anderson's making adjustments. So even if they are getting smoked in the first half, you're probably saying to yourself, like, oh, we're taking a second half bet on a team that's a 5-point underdog. Even in a negative game script, this team is kind of thriving.
Yeah, 100%. And like that's kind of where I'm at. Like I'm not asking Utah State to win the game. I'm asking them, after they're already down 2-3 scores in the first half, like to come out and just keep it close in the second half.
Yeah, and update on Mikey Keene. He was spotted in a walking boot at Fresno practice. So if he wouldn't go, it would be Logan Fife, who played, I want to say it was 4 games last year. So he has a little bit of experience, but a tangible drop-off, I would call it. It's a not-nothing drop-off. Not that it's like massive and Fresno State's cooked or something, but it's a little bit of a drop-off for sure. So something to monitor. So I like that pick there. I'm going to stick on Friday night. Give me Stanford plus 11 against Colorado. Faded Dion last week and it worked. Colorado probably should have lost that game to Arizona State. Outgained by nearly 200 yards by the Sun Devils. Pretty much a corpse of a Sun Devils team. Coming back home, they're playing their 7th game in a row, and the 7 games have been well documented between the TCU game, Nebraska, the Colorado State game on a Saturday night. They then play Oregon and USC, 2 high-profile games. And then you see Arizona State. You start to see like a level drop there. I think this Colorado team is starting to run out of gas a little bit, and it's going to show against a Stanford team that's coming off of a bye with a first-year head coach, a strong offensive-minded head coach in Troy Taylor. Go back to week 1 where I know it's Hawaii, but Stanford came in, trick plays, wide receiver passes, double passes, reverses. So like Troy Taylor with extra prep, I think is going to call a really strong game. And I think this Colorado team is really running on fumes. We've spoken about their depth issues over the course of the season. And I think you're starting to see it with injuries. Travis Hunter maybe back doesn't really move me. This Colorado team outside the top 100 in net yards per play. So this Colorado team's been getting pushed around in the box.
Oh, yeah.
I think Stanford could keep this one competitive. I won't go for the outright upset, but I think Stanford, getting double digits here for sure. Sign me up. I think Stanford could be frisky here as an underdog.
I'm 100% with you, and my handicap is a lot simpler this game. Colorado doesn't deserve to be favored by double digits against anyone.
I agree. Where's this number coming from?
Right, like Stanford is not a good football team, but like on a grand scale, like Colorado is not a great football team either. Like they're going to be fighting for bowl eligibility. This isn't, the team that we saw. This is all hype, and I don't see a double-digit victory coming for the Buffs in this game. Like, especially with the offense that Stanford has been able to piece together, even though, I'm not really sold on the talent level of the Cardinal, but at the same time, like I'm definitely not sold on the Colorado defense. I think anyone can score on them with a competent offensive scheme.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pulling up the box score here. Arizona, 5 yards per play. Colorado, 4.1 yards per play. I mean, Arizona in the box score really took it to Colorado. So I like Stanford quite a bit here on Friday night. Let's keep it moving now. Let's see. We are going to go bring back up our favorite total bet of the week. Cody, where are you looking?
I'm going to the Illinois-Maryland game, and Illinois burned me last week, taking it over with one of the worst second-half performances from 2 teams I've ever seen with them in Nebraska. My God, that was just a comedy of errors.
Now that's ugly football we were talking about earlier. That's where you're pissed that you have a wager on the game.
Especially when it's the over, and you're like, have these teams ever touched a football before? My God. But I'm going back to it. I'm going over in this one. Full disclosure, I expect the Terps to do a lot of the heavy lifting to get to this number. That offense is top 25 in EPA per rush and EPA per pass this season, and Illinois' defense has dropped off so dramatically. They're outside the top 70 defensively in EPA against both the run and pass. So I think Talia Tagovailoa and this Maryland offense are going to have a lot of success against Illinois. But I also think that plays more to the over because we've heard Brett Belimo talk recently about him wanting to – he's kind of insinuated that he wants to get back to running the ball more, that the Luke Altmaier airing it out offense isn't necessarily working. But with how bad this Illinois defense is, I don't think they really have an option to where they're going to have to air it out. It's going to result in two things. One, it's going to either set up Maryland in good field position with the turnover, or it's going to be an explosive play. That's kind of been Illinois' offense of late, is they're either hitting an explosive play to put them in position to score, or they're setting up the other team to score. This is a relatively low total, and I just think that the Maryland offense could get into the 40s in this game, and all I need is a couple scores from Illinois. So I like the number at 50.5.
Yeah, Illinois circling the drain. Just that season has ended abruptly in Champaign, and I think Maryland. We saw it last week, even competitive against Ohio State, tied at half. But this is a team that they're in that like transition from I keep calling it like the haves of the Big Ten and the have-nots of the Big Ten, where Maryland, they kind of are the cream of the crop of the middle, where they could beat up on some of the lackluster offenses because they have Talia Tagovailoa. They have a nice recruiting class like coming in year after year under Mike Loxley. So I think Maryland's offense could dictate the dance there, where Illinois not going to need much. I think Illinois, honestly, Maryland, kind of a tricky spot after that Ohio State game. Maybe Illinois' offense could show a little bit of life in this one, just extra prep. Maryland maybe after the Ohio State game, a little dragging their feet a little bit at home as a big favorite. And maybe Illinois could, early especially, maybe, get an extra score or two.
Pardon the pun, but with how they turtled up in the second half after they took the 17-10 lead, I don't think they have any wounds to lick, anything to stumble in because they barely played football in the second half. As someone who had the plus 19.5 as my upset,
that hurt.
I'm
a
little hurt.
That hurt. Yeah, especially when you end the half not getting 3 points because you are out of timeouts and you throw the ball in bounds. But hey, that's college football for you.
Decision.
My favorite total: Washington State, Arizona over 50.5. I think this is a game that you should be looking at like alternate totals. Like I think you could see this total start with a 7 when it's all said and done. I think there's a recipe for fireworks in Pullman on Saturday night. Arizona, we've now seen, we don't know for sure who's going to be starting under center, whether it's James Delora, the veteran quarterback who has anchored this Arizona offense to big numbers in the past, or if it's Noah Fifita, the freshman quarterback that scored 23 in his first start against Washington, was competitive. And obviously we just spoke about USC where, 43-41, something, scored like 40 plus points, moved the ball at USC. Washington State's defense played nearly 100 snaps because of how UCLA dominated that game on the defensive side of the ball. And Washington State's defense was on the field a ton against UCLA. So there's a chance that they're a little tired here against an Arizona State offense that is top 25 in EPA per play, looking really, really strong over the balance of the season. Again, I don't really care who the quarterback is. They have McMillan, who's a rising star at wide receiver. Cowing was big down the stretch against USC. This Arizona offense, I think, has a pretty high floor. They're able to move the ball. And I think Washington State, when you've seen them play, what do you want to call it, above average offenses, and I think Arizona fits the bill of that, they've struggled. UCLA should have scored more than into the 20s that last week. They had a pick 6 before half, and they missed 2 field goal kicks. When they played Oregon State, they let up 35. I mean, even when they played Wisconsin moved the ball in an above-average clip against them. Colorado State was garbage time, but they got the 24. So I think Arizona's going to be able to move the ball pretty well here against the Washington State defense that is lackluster. Meanwhile, on the other side, Arizona's defensive front is not UCLA's. I think this is another breakout game for Cam Ward and the Washington State passing offense. Arizona, if you go to their coverage grade at Pro Football Focus, as I get the exact number up as I filibuster while I type it in, Arizona is 123rd in coverage grade per PFF. That is the 10th worst mark in the entire country. Washington State is all pass. It is all through the air there. We saw what they did to Oregon State. a few weeks ago, scoring 38 points. This Washington State passing offense is number 7 in success rate, 25th in EPA per play. I think both teams are going to cook, and there's going to be explosive plays all over the place with guys downfield wide open. I love the over in this game, and I will be laddering that over all the way up into the 70s.
I mean, I love the play. This number's way too low. I will say on Arizona, I really wish and hope that if it's a decision that Fifita starts over DeLaura, because I think he actually gives Arizona a higher ceiling offensively. I understand it was USC's defense last week, but I saw a stat that came up on the broadcast. He is, if I'm remembering this correctly, he is now the 4th Pac-12 quarterback in Pac-12 or in the past 20 years to put up 300 yards and 5 touchdowns against the AP top 10 ranked team. The other 3 were Sam Darnold, Matt Barkley, and Matt Leinart. Pretty good company.
That's
especially for a freshman quarterback at Arizona. So, and I understand it's USC's defense part of that, but I think what I've seen from Fifita is he doesn't – the big problem with Jaden DeLaura is he can make some wow plays and really lead an explosive offense, but then he can make some plays where you're like, brother, what did you see on that play? Like, what are you thinking? And we haven't necessarily seen that, even despite his youth. We haven't seen that from Fifita against 2 very highly ranked opponents. So I don't know. I feel like there's more upside there. So I kind of want to see him just kind of get the reins and go with it. But I'm with you. No matter who starts at quarterback, I think this total is too low.
I agree, and I want Fifita to start too because he earned it. You know, what's wrong with some good old meritocracy in this one? Like, just let the kid loose. I think 100%. I think he's going to show up again in this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, everyone gets Wally pipped every now and then. It happens.
All right, let's keep it moving. Let's talk about another Pac-12 game. Biggest one on the board. Top 10 matchup, Oregon-Washington. The 2 renewed pleasantries after a crazy game last year that saw Washington steal the game late from Oregon, 37-34, and pretty much ruin Oregon's chance at a college football playoff. Obviously, other things happened down the stretch, but that's pretty much it for them. They switch locations now. Oregon traveling to Seattle. I think there's questions on both sides of this one. I think, especially on the defensive side of the ball, I think it's setting up to be one of the games of the year. This is arguably the 2 best offense in college football. Now Michael Penix is the Heisman Trophy favorite, the quarterback of Washington. Bo Nix is the 3rd choice. Caleb Williams sandwiched in between them. So a lot to gain and lose in this one, Cody. How do you see it?
So you kind of just spelled out my handicap of it. The offenses are going to be the 2 best units on this field. And I have a lot of questions about both defenses. So I'm taking the over 67 available at Caesars, 67.5 at DraftKings and FanDuel. I like them both, but I'll take the lower number when I can get it. I just think that we haven't seen Oregon face a functional high-octane passing offense. Like, I thought that potentially Colorado could test them. Turns out that the lines of scrimmage ended up being the decisive factor in that game. Shedeur Sanders had to get the ball out in half a second, or else he was getting mauled against Oregon. This Oregon's passing defense grades out well in terms of EPA per play, in terms of success rate, but they haven't faced a really good passing offense. And like, they've been exposed against the run like they were against Texas Tech with Tyler Shuck running all over them. But Washington's obviously not going to run the ball, but I think that with the plethora of high-end receiving options that Washington's going to throw at this Oregon secondary, I don't see Washington's offense having any trouble getting to somewhere in the mid-30s. And on the flip side, we know that so my one concern about the over is that Bo Nix has struggled on the road, particularly in big spots in his career. But one thing I've seen from Bo Nix that I don't think we necessarily saw all the time last year, and definitely not at Auburn, was he's willing to take what's given to him this year a lot. Like, he picked apart Colorado throwing 8-yard outs over and over and over again and letting the guys do work after the catch. So I don't think he's going to force anything against a pretty porous Washington defense. Like we already mentioned, we saw Arizona put up a nice total against them in a game that got a little hairy for Washington when no one was really expecting it. So I think Oregon's going to have plenty of offensive success in this one as well. And I think we're getting into the 70s pretty comfortably in this game.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I saw the over, so I kind of went a different route because I didn't, my play isn't on the side, so I do want to kind of talk about how I see this game going. I think Oregon's defense is kind of the swing in this game because this defense grades out pretty damn good.
Oh, yeah.
Last year, first year coach Dan Lanning, former defensive coordinator at Georgia, the team graded out nicely, top 30 in coverage grade, top 30 in rush defense at PFF, but the secondary had too many lapses, which the underlying metrics didn't match the numbers because they graded 109th in EPA per pass and 122nd in passing success rate allowed, despite being a top 30 coverage unit. So what went wrong? There's something not clicking there. But this year, it seems like it's starting to click in that unit that's been a very well recruited defense for years now. So there's talent in there. It seems like Lanning's starting to get the results because if you look, they're top 10 in EPA per pass this season. I know they haven't played a murderer's row yet, and Washington is in its own stratosphere when it comes to passing games, but it seems like Oregon is starting to get the results with Lanning there. It seems like the defense is a little bit further along than it was last year. You look at the other side of the ball, Washington, 112th in coverage grade, 98th in tackling. Oregon actually, from a success rate perspective, is better than Washington. Washington is all pass, have kind of struggled to establish the run game. They're outside the top 50 in success rate on the ground. Oregon, number 1 in success rate this entire season. So we know that this Oregon offense is going to cook. I think they're going to keep the Washington offense off the field. This Washington offense, it loves to pass. If the Oregon defense get a little bit of pressure, get Michael Penix outside the pocket, all of a sudden Oregon's getting off the field and looking to score more because this Oregon offense is going to get into the end zone. So I took Oregon team total over 33.5. I think that's my way of playing it. I agree with you. I think that this game gets into the 70s. I think Oregon's the better team. I think that they could win this game. Absolutely. That's not like a crazy hot take because it's like lines inside of a spread, but I think Oregon's the better team, and I trust their offense to get in the end zone 5 times. That gets you over this total.
No, and I think there's a lot of ways to play this game. I think this is going to be like you said, Oregon's defense is that's a really good call with you calling it like the swing point of this game. To me, I'm staying away from either side of it in terms of, the spread, just because I think it's a prove it spot for both of them. Like, can Washington elevate against the best defense that they've likely played? Can Oregon's defense play to the level they have been against easily the best offense that they face, easily the best passing offense that they face? So I think it's going to tell us a lot about either of these two teams. And I think what we're going to find out is that both of these offenses are good, which is why I'm on the over.
Yeah, I think, listen, it's never easy to go on the road, especially in the Pac-12. There's a lot of really crazy environments, and Seattle's no different for Washington. I think this Washington defense still needs to prove it to me. So I think that this is the way to attack it with Oregon team total over. Cody, I know you're a North Carolina Tar Heels fan, and it makes sense that we make this one of the segments because we also need to talk about Miami and the absolute debacle that was that end of game against Georgia Tech. For those that don't know, Miami with less than 40 seconds left, Georgia Tech out of timeout. So a knee literally ends the game. The game ends. There's no need to run another play. The clock would run out. Miami opted to run it. They fumbled it. Georgia Tech recovered, and 2 plays later went 75 yards and scored a touchdown to win. So Miami's undefeated season, hopes of an outside chance at the college football playoff. We'll see about ACC championship, but it all went up in flames because they didn't take a knee. They now travel to North Carolina to play an upstart Tar Heels team, undefeated, just absolutely dismantled Syracuse. Drake May, future top 5 pick in the NFL draft. Cody, as a Tar Heels fan, how are you feeling going into this one? What's your look? What's your best bet?
So I guess you would call it PTSD of North Carolina in big games. I am not taking the North Carolina side on this one. However, the one thing I am confident in is that North Carolina is going to put up points. So I'm taking North Carolina's team total over 30.5. First things first, they've hit this total in every game this season. I understand that Miami is the most talented defense that they played, but the Hurricanes defense, specifically the secondary, notwithstanding the final play against Georgia Tech where the safeties forgot how to, stay in their assignment and got beat for the game-winning touchdown for Georgia Tech. They've only really been tested once in terms of offense and talent, and that was against Texas A&M, and they were at home for that game, and they still gave up 33 points. I think UNC's offense is more dynamic, maybe not in terms of, skill position talent, but in terms of schematics and definitely in terms of Drake May at the quarterback position. I think that he has a real chance to pick apart this Miami secondary, which has a lot of talent, but hasn't necessarily played well coached or, well disciplined. And with this game in Chapel Hill, I just think that North Carolina is really hitting its stride. I think we saw last week. I understand that Syracuse is, a solid bowl team, but not anything more than that. But at the same time, I think getting Tez Walker back really opened up the levels of that offense in ways that might not show up for his, box score line, but I think it really opened up the rest of the offense. So I just think asking this team to get over 30 points, I think that's a pretty easy ask. Even like what worries me is that North Carolina's defense has been susceptible to giving up big numbers. So that's why I'm not taking the North Carolina side, but I think North Carolina is going to score in this game.
It's not like I'm going head to head with you, but I like Miami in this game. I make this game like a pick 'em, and I think a fair line is like North Carolina minus 2.5, 3, and I think we are getting a little bit of a nudge towards North Carolina taking some money and being shifted in that direction because of what happened at the end of the Miami game. So I'm willing to be wrong. Maybe like this team completely folds because they're being coached by an idiot and they just can't recover mentally. But I think the more my initial thought was like, all right, just like stay away from this game. You don't know how Miami's going to act. But I actually think there's a few advantages that Miami could explain this game, mainly in the run game for North Carolina. Mm-hmm. North Carolina's run blocking is outside the top 100 this season per PFF. And Miami is a pretty stifling defense with new DC Lance Guidry. This Miami defense looks the part. We're talking top 25 in terms of overall defensive grade. The pass rush has been ferocious. Like you said, that this Miami defense is going to be the most talented defense they have seen. And you look at the schedule, it's a little overrated. Minnesota is not what it's used to be. Syracuse is a cupcake beater. South Carolina, we know, is not strong on defense. So I think Miami's defense can maybe dictate the terms. I know that Drake May is better than Tyler Van Dyke, and if TVD is going to throw 3 interceptions, some of them inexplicable like he did against Georgia Tech, I mean, Miami's going to get cooked for sure. But I think Miami's defense could generate enough stops and get into the backfield enough, especially with North Carolina's inability to establish a run game. I think there's some avenues for Miami to be frisky in this game and potentially pull the upset. Again, it's asking, will this team rally and, be vindicated and galvanized after the loss? But it's not like you're traveling to a hostile environment in Chapel Hill, a night game. It's not like, we're up against it. I don't think that there's much separating these teams. I think Miami's a more talented team. So I think there's an inflated number here on the Hurricanes because of what happened.
No, I actually don't disagree with you. My bias says that North Carolina is going to win this game, but the talent of Miami is superior top to bottom on the roster. It's just, I think there's a coaching discrepancy, and I think there's a very clear quarterback discrepancy. And then you throw in the whatever lingering effects are from last week. I just think North Carolina is going to win. But having said that, North Carolina's defense, again, hasn't proven against high-level competition that it's worth being trusted yet. So getting more than a field goal, this game has a chance to be very close within a field goal. And so getting the hook on that, I like your side on that.
I agree. Obviously, I said it. let's do some upset picks. Cody. I personally think that this game is shaping up to be one of the most interesting ones on the slate. So why don't you tell us who you think is live for an upset? I can't be hurt by this team again.
I'll take the pain that I'm setting myself up for this one. With this one, I'm going Texas A&M plus 3.5, plus 140 on the money line against Tennessee in Knoxville. Like I said earlier, it became clear last week that Max Johnson is a downgrade, much more clear than we thought from Connor Wegman. But I also don't think Tennessee's defense has proven in the secondary that they have the talent to keep up with your Nye Smiths, your Evan Stewarts. Texas A&M has a lot of skill position talent that, we might overlook because of some of the guys they lost from last year's team, particularly in the backfield. And so I think A&M should be able to move the ball. But I think this really comes down to A&M's defense. When you look at this Tennessee offense, when they've been successful with since Joe Milton took over the offense, it's been when they've been able to run the ball with Jalen Wright and Jabari Small. They've been able to establish things with the run and then set up play action, and that's when Joe Milton has actually been at his best in this game. Well, I don't think Texas A&M is going to let them run the ball. We saw the best run defense that we've seen Tennessee play to this point was against Florida, which is their one loss of the season. And you look at it, Jalen Wright averaged 3.9 per carry, and Jabari Small was only at 5 yards per carry, which is below his season average. And this Aggies defense is 7th in the country in opposing EPA per run this season. I think it's going to put a lot of pressure on Joe Milton. And if it's a pressure on Joe Milton, I have zero faith in him to make the consistent throws, even that Jalen Milroe made last week. I understand that Texas A&M has shown the propensity to get beat over the top of the secondary. That's pretty shaky, but I don't have faith in Joe Milton without the shield of the run game to be able to consistently make plays at the level he's going to need to.
Yeah, this game is shaping up to be a really interesting one. I think I'm on the other side with Tennessee coming off of a bye, and I wonder if Texas A&M, we're talking about Miami, like wind out of the sails type thing. Mm-hmm. A&M has that vibe potentially after the way they lost that Alabama game, and that was kind of their shot.
Yeah,
I will agree with you though. I don't know if I trust Joe Milton to take advantage of the obvious weak point on this A&M defense. So it's an interesting one. One I got to think about a little bit more. My play is significantly grosser. It is on Pitt plus 7.5 against Louisville. What's the money line here? I think it's like 200-ish. Let me see. Money line Pitt. You can get at DraftKings plus 250.
Oh, baby.
I love it. I liked Louisville last week against Notre Dame because I thought that the spot was so grueling and terrible for Notre Dame. Notre Dame coming off back-to-back night games, 6 straight game, a lot of travel involved, all that stuff. Louisville absolutely suffocated them wins. We're now selling high on Louisville. We're going the complete opposite way. We're taking the other team they're playing. Pitt is in it possibly can't get worse for Pitt. They benched Phil Dracovic, who has been arguably the worst quarterback in all of college football this season. And they're going with Christian Wallach, a Penn State transfer, lightly experienced, but he literally cannot be worse than Phil Dracovic. So I think off the bye, you got to get like some sort of bounce. It has to be like a little bit better. So that's trending up the Pitt offense because the Pitt defense has actually been sneaky still nails under Pat Narduzzi. Team is top 30 in sacks. They allow about 3 yards per carry. And if you remember, 2 weeks ago, everybody watched on Friday night an ESPN game against North Carolina State where Louisville's offense looked absolutely terrible and stuck in the mud, and Jack Plummer looked terrible. Was under duress, couldn't move, a lot of terrible incompletions and interceptions. I think Pitt could do a similar script to North Carolina State and ugly this game up. I mean, totals in the low 40s, sitting at totals at 46. So expected grinder here. I think Pitt's defense could dictate. And also off the bye week, new quarterback. Maybe there's a few trick plays installed. Maybe the team is refreshed coming off the bye. Louisville's playing their 7th straight game now to start the season on another road trip after, this game was, I believe it was ABC, Notre Dame. Jack Harlow was there. Donovan Mitchell was there. This was like a rocking atmosphere in Louisville, a signature win for Jeff Brom in his first season as alma mater. 100%. Well-deserved win. Are we sure they're going to get up for this one coming back the other way against a Pitt team that, again, it can't possibly be worse. So give me all them points for Pitt. I think they win the game outright.
You're a brave man, because the one thing I looked at this one as well, because it seems like an obvious, narratively, it seems like an obvious letdown spot for Louisville after last week. But, oh my God, I feel even with the quarterback change, there's a real give up potential with this Pitt team and Pat Narduzzi.
It's just beginning. It's just beginning. It's just beginning. The Wallach era.
I don't know, man. Like, I think there's a chance that Narduzzi is not at Pitt after this season, and I think
that's true. But they're going to finish strong there. Now.
Like I said, you're a brave man. I wouldn't touch this game with a 10-foot pole. there is no shot I would have any piece of this game. So I respect the gumption that you're taking with it.
It's also CW special of the week. It's on the CW. So you know things are going to get wild on the CW.
Always.
Everyone, after they watch Burn Notice, they'll watch Pitt versus Louisville.
Your Riverdale, Pitt, Louisville, and then Live Golf. What more can you ask for?
I love it. I can't wait for Pitt to win outright. It's going to be absolutely amazing. All right. So that was a little appetizer for the Sickos pick. Yes. I think you got screwed on your Sickos pick last week too, because Ohio lost by half a point there.
So they had the ball inside the 5, and instead of kicking the field goal while up 25, decided to go for it with their backup quarterback. Got stuck
and didn't get it.
No, unbelievable. I know I was 1-7 last week, so I don't have a lot of leeway. But let me tell you, I got screwed on a couple.
No, that one you got shafted. But where are you going this week? Looking similarly, it seems.
Definitely. So I'm going. Taking the Texas State Bobcats -16 against UL Monroe. Let me go ahead and say that trusting the Texas State defense does not make me feel great. But I also don't see a world in which UL Monroe is able to keep pace with this Texas State offense. The Bobcats defense is atrocious. They're outside of the top 100 in EPA against the pass and 76, I think, against the run. But the Warhawks offense isn't necessarily capable of taking full advantage of that. They've had 2 quarterbacks, Wright and Herring, this year that have played thrown significant attempts, and they're both barely completing over 50% of their passes. And their offense is 132nd in EPA, literally next to last in the country on passing plays. And they're just 72nd in the run game in EPA as well. And then on the flip side, their defense is just as bad. They're 131st against the pass in EPA and 105th against the run. Meanwhile, Texas State is 45th in EPA per pass and 40th in EPA per rush. TJ Finley and Ishmael Mahdi are going to tear up this ULM defense pretty much throughout this entire game. And I think they're probably going to win by 3 scores. So I think getting -16 is a very fair line.
I had considered this one earlier in the week. Didn't bet it yet, but it's nearly making the card. I think this is a good get right spot for the Bobcats. They had a few things go their way early against ULL, and then at the end it kind of fell apart, and they ended up losing to the Raging Cajun by 1 score. So I think this could be a good get right spot. ULM got absolutely dump trucked by South Alabama. I think it was 55-7. They got absolutely.
Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, it was brutal. All right, my Sickos pick. I mean, where else would I be going? Meanwhile, bonus pick last week, Dilfer over. Guy scored 56. 56. So my Sickos pick, I'm going to take the spread. I'm going to take UAB +10 against UTSA. I think the game goes over because it always does. But I actually think UAB is in an incredible situation here to not only cover the 10, win the game outright. I think this is another upset pick potential here. UAB's offense is one of the best in the country. Alex Mortensen and Trent Dilfer, there were jokes about how they were going to go about making this roster. They have been lights out all year. Listen, I know you're playing South Florida and everything, and that team is terrible on defense and all that, but you score 56 on the road against anybody, you get nice, full credit there. UAB's offense, top 20 in EPA top 25, in passing success rate, 30th in EPA per play, overall 19th in EPA per play. So this offense is absolutely humming. And I think we're in a good spot of fading UTSA because they got Frank Harris back last week. They scored 50 plus against Temple themselves on the road. So full credit there. But let's go back and look at what this UTSA defense is doing, because they allowed 34 to Temple, who got absolutely shut down by Tulsa the week before. So Temple offense, I'm down on. I think this UAB offense is going to give them a lot of issues. UTSA, dead last in coverage grade per PFF. There are going to be guys running so wide open on the most beautiful routes created by Mortensen that this offense is going to be lightning bolts here. I think UAB is going to struggle to stop UTSA, but the Blazers are going to be right behind them. I mean, I make this game 6.5, so I agree UTSA should be favored, but this Roadrunners team is being priced still like the team from 2 years ago or last year when they won Conference USA. I know Frank Harris is back, but I don't know if this UTSA defense is what it's been in the past. I mean, it's like kind of like a national average across the board, and particularly struggling against the pass. I just said worst coverage grade, 108th in success rate. This is not the recipe you're looking for when you want to cover multiple scores against an offense that, I mean, it's starting to come together here. They just scored 56 against South Florida. They only scored 23 against Tulane, but Tulane has a much better defense. And also, UAB was like really in that game. I know they ended up losing by 2 scores. Like that game was very tight. That game was a 1-score game for most of it, and UAB was leading for a little bit of it. They scored 21 against Georgia even. I think this offense is cooking, and I think it could overpower UTSA, to be honest. So give me UAB, Sickos Pick. It's basically like my segment where I just give out a Trent Dilfer related bet.
Oh yeah, it's the Blazer segment of the week.
I might have to like get a blazer and start putting it on for when I share.
Oh my God, please do a blazer and then a pet dragon. That's all you need, really. I mean, UAB outscored Alabama by 39 against USF. If you really want to look at it that way, if you want to talk about how good the offense, because Alabama only managed 17 against South Florida. So, I mean, but I'm with you on your handicap. This UTSA team, with Frank Harris back, there's so much of history baked into it when the situation around him has just deteriorated over the past few years. Like, Zachary Franklin now at Ole Miss, he doesn't really have that go-to wide receiver anymore. A couple of years ago, he had what's the kid's name? The running back that they had. Totally blanking. Anyway,
as well.
Anyway, they had a running back, but the other thing that UTSA always had built up that kind of ended last year was a veteran big offensive line. And they don't have that necessarily anymore. And the UAB's defense isn't anything to write home about. Don't get me wrong. But if they can come up with a stop or something against this UTSA defense, they're going to score a ton. So plus 10, that's a little rich. So I like this still.
Yeah, I think UAB could be frisky here. And like you said, I mean, it's a high total. It's sitting in the high 60s. So I think UAB could be super, super frisky in this spot. All right. And there's our show. Cody, you want to recap your picks and we can get out of here?
Yeah, let's do it. So early week, I have Utah State second half plus 3.5 against Fresno State, not Florida State. Jesus, Fresno State. Illinois, Maryland over 50.5 is my favorite total. For the Washington, Oregon game, I'm also targeting the over 67. Miami, North Carolina, one of the marquee games of the week. North Carolina team total over 30.5. Upset pick, give me Texas A&M plus 3.5 or plus 140 on the money line at Tennessee. And then Sickos, Texas State Bob Kitties bouncing back minus 16 against UL Monroe.
I love it. We're getting you back on track after last week. For me, early week, I bet Stanford plus 11 against Colorado. I bet the Wazoo, Arizona over 58.5. I also took the Oregon team total over 33.5 against Washington. Took Miami plus 3.5 against North Carolina. Took Pitt plus 7.5 against Louisville in an upset special. And my Sickos pick, my Dilfer pick to UAB plus 10 against UTSA. There's our week 7 preview. Don't forget, if you like any of those picks and you want to tail one of us, ride with one of us, make sure you're doing it at DraftKings. Promo code STB. You bet $5, you'll get $200 in bonus bets instantly, as well as every day you'll get a no-sweat single-game parlay. So again, use the code STB, support the podcast, get some free bets and some no-sweat SGPs. Cody, it's a pleasure. I'll talk to you next Wednesday. We got a loaded slate again next week, so can't wait. Until then, best of luck on your bets, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
We'll see you.